Now, today is Canada Day, and it's the day when Canadians across the world celebrate their nation's founding and its rich history. And on this day, the group representing Canadian businesses is pushing to bring Ireland and Canada closer together at a time when Brexit and the Trump administration are perhaps pushing both of us a little further from more traditional friends. Chris Collenette is head of the Ireland-Canada Business Association, and he's on the line now. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Pat, and happy Canada Day.
And to you too. Now, you haven't been on the show before, but you're not the first member of the Collenette family to be with us.
That's right. My father was a former Minister of Transportation in Canada during 9/11, and you interviewed him about this time last year, maybe a little earlier last year, with regards to the work that Canadian and Irish air traffic controllers did redirecting aircraft over the North Atlantic during the sad day that was 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, what he had to do was to take critical decisions about whether to allow planes to land or whether to turn them back. And, history tells us he did the very right thing.
Well, I'm sure he'd be happy to hear that.
Yeah, all right. Modesty forbids. I know how you're feeling. Now, you've lived here for almost, a dozen years. Do you think that the Irish and the Canadians have sort of similarities? We live beside Britain, which is a dominant neighbour, and Canadians live beside the US, which is a dominant neighbour.
Yeah, and look, I've lived here for over 13 years. My wife's Irish. We met in Canada while she was studying and working in Toronto. I think that culturally, obviously, Canada and Ireland have a lot in common. There's over 14% of Canadians herald some sort of Irish ancestry. I think we're both smaller, export-driven countries in comparison to our larger neighbors. And certainly we're taking an approach to liberalized trade at times when our neighbors are perhaps retrenching a bit to protectionist approaches. From an Ireland-Canada Business Association perspective, we represent about 100 companies doing business between the two countries. We about 70 of which have Canadian companies with operations here. We have with about 15,000 employees, and so certainly we've seen over the last 3 years since CETA, the trade agreement, has been provisionally applied, a real uptick. Our membership has almost doubled, and we've seen the investment and new setups here by Canadian companies happening, every couple of months.
Now, Ireland enjoys a trade surplus with Canada, does it not?
That's right. And, I was looking up the numbers this morning to ensure I was correct. At the last count, 2019, Ireland exported $1.7 billion to Canada in 2019, and Canada exported about $700 million to Ireland, meaning there's actually close to $1 billion, give or take, trade surplus. So I don't know about you, Pat, but if I was in a partnership agreement with somebody and I was doing $1 billion more in revenue, I'd like to finalize that deal as soon as possible. And I suppose that's what we're asking the Irish government to do today is to ratify CETA.
Now, explain what CETA is, because, we've been talking about Brexit and how if we are to negotiate, we couldn't negotiate directly with the UK. It would have to be a pan-European negotiation. So what is the status of CETA? Is the European Union at one with CETA, and what does it contain?
Sure. So CETA is a comprehensive economic trade agreement between the two countries. It's almost 40 years in the making, to tell you the truth. Prime Minister Trudeau's father his government started discussing it back in the 70s. What it does is really, it removes barriers and tariffs across almost every industry between the two countries. 98% of tariffs right now, as it's provisionally applied, about 99% when it's fully applied. There's access to subnational procurement, meaning that for the first time, EU companies can go directly bidding on procurement projects with the provincial governments. As an example of that, one of our members, Pharmapod, has been very successful in Ontario, bidding on Ontario e-health projects. Reduces regulatory barriers. And there's investor protections, and there's even a sustainable investment aspect, which should get the support of Eamon Ryan and the Greens for the Green Party in order to ratify it here.
So what's holding us up? I mean, how many of the EU 27 have actually ratified it, and does it require everybody to sign on the dotted line for this to be fully in force?
Yeah, yes, it does. It does. So it's a mixed. It's been determined to be a mixed agreement in terms of jurisdiction in the EU. There's presently 14 countries who are member states who have ratified the deal, including Luxembourg, who actually just ratified it about a month ago, and interestingly, would be one of those cities or one of those countries in Europe which is competing against Dublin and Ireland for inward investment. It's been passed through the French lower parliament. It hasn't gotten all the way through to the upper house yet. I suppose about a year ago, actually more than a year ago, the Irish government was waiting for a referral to the EU Court of Justice, with regards to whether the investment dispute resolution within CETA was in line with EU treaties. Now, interestingly, it's very similar to that of the one that is contained in the Vietnam EU agreement and the Singapore EU agreement. It was brought by Belgium. The Court of Justice has resolved that, put that to bed a year ago, and so I suppose. What we're saying to the Irish government today is let's get it across the line here. It's been over a year we've had all the obstacles removed. Let's pass it through the Dáil and the Seanad as soon as possible.
Okay, so you mentioned Luxembourg, but Austria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Portugal, Spain, and Sweden. So we don't want to be last in line. So this deal will improve things even further. You know, we talk about in Brexit Canada and Canada Plus. Would this deal mean that this is Canada Plus for Canada?
I'm not so sure. I quite follow. I mean, I think that the UK and Canada obviously have a strong trading relationship, and we want the UK to succeed with Brexit. But what it could mean is that if we don't get this deal through the Dáil in the next couple of months, EU and Canada and the UK could move ahead and finalize an agreement themselves. And so I suppose that's why we're saying right now, like, let's move ahead and get this passed.
And now, I mentioned visas earlier in the program. We know that J1s are not possible for Irish students this summer. What's the situation with Canada?
Well, I mean, I think the situation is that Canada has allowed EU student or Irish students almost, I think, for a number of years. The influx of students to Vancouver has been huge over the last number of years, and actually has led to the Irish government investing in a new consulate in Vancouver. I suppose right now we're waiting to see whether that there'll be a travel bridge between Canada and Ireland in order to see if that will go ahead. But certainly Canada has been welcoming to J1 visitors in the past number of years, and the Canadian government has also increased the worker visa permit during the last economic troubles here to 2 years as opposed to 1 year. I should note that the Irish government has made enormous investments in Canada in the last year and a half. The government has opened an IDA office in Toronto, a second office for the EI in Montreal, and the consulate in Vancouver. And so I'd say that getting the CETA deal across the line is probably the last piece of the puzzle.
All right. Well, warm relations between Ireland and Canada is something to be welcomed. And of course, your health service is a service to be admired compared to that of your neighbour down south. Anyway, look, thank you very much for joining us. Chris Collenette, who's head of the Ireland-Canada Business Association.